He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hello there, kia ora, and welcome along to the Music 101 interview podcast. I'm Charlotte Ryan. Nathan Haines has to be one of our most prolific New Zealand musicians. He's constantly pushing the boundaries of both electronic and dance music and jazz, and is celebrated in both musical circles. Over his career, the saxophonist, he's also a producer, a composer, a band leader. He's collaborated with so many interesting musicians: Damon Albarn, Marlena Shaw, Mark de Clive-Lowe and the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and these days with artists like Flamingo Pierre and Frank Booker. Nathan's just released his 11th album, Notes, and on this album he teamed up with his longtime friend, producer Phil Asher. He worked with Phil Asher on his brilliant album Sound Travels and Squire for Hire in the early 2000s. But during the work together and the process of putting this album together, Phil died unexpectedly, and Nathan was tasked with finishing the album. So understandably, it's been an absolute journey. And this album also definitely, as you'll hear, represents transformative change for Nathan too. He's bet throat cancer, he's become a father, he's lost a great friend. And to celebrate the album, Nathan Haines wanted to be in London for the album release, even though he does live here in Auckland. And due to his voice, he needed to speak to me in his morning, London morning, because that's when his voice sounded best. So it was a pleasure to come in late one night to RNZ and talk to Nathan about Notes. Notes is out in the world and I absolutely love it. I also love that you're on the other side of the world. Was it important for you to be in London for this album release?
Well, yeah, it was, Charlotte, because, I started this album with Phil Asher. The Sound Travels and Squire for Hire, which I made when I was living in London in the 2000s. Those were the albums that sort of resonated around the international underground music community and still do. So when I got ill 6 years ago, Phil was the first guy on the phone to me from London, just checking in with me every day. And then out of that, I guess you could say renewed friendship, because Phil and I hadn't worked together since we completed Squire for Hire in 2003. Right. We'd always kept in touch, but we hadn't worked together. Out of that, we started talking about making some music together. And so at this stage, I'd already had a couple of demos, and then having Phil on board again as co-producer just really sort of informed me of the sort of album I wanted to make. And it was definitely an album that reflected what I was doing with Phil 20 years ago, but updated and with a new sort of slant and sound, I guess. And hopefully that's what I've delivered.
Did Phil have a certain style of sound? Like when you say you were excited about the sort of, the future of the album working with him, what did that mean in your ears, or what could you hear?
It's really about a mindset, but, Phil was such an incredible beat maker. So if you go back, if the listeners are familiar with Sound Travels and Squire for Hire, then, it's really the beats that drive that album forward. And so I was very excited to work with Phil, having worked with lots of different beat makers over the years, to have him back on board, because he's got such an incredibly distinctive sound to the way that he writes his beats. Not only that, but just the way that he's approaching it and, even the discussions we'd have around it. Obviously, Phil passed away a couple of years into us really not even being able to finish that much of the album. Mm. But I think his spirit has really informed me about the sort of album I wanted to make. Saying that, though, I got, my dear friend Frank Booker on board to help co-produce a track. I got Mark Mack on board from For Hero, who I'd worked with a lot previously. And then I also did some acoustic tracks, which didn't have any program beats on at all. And, the song which is most special to me on the album is the actual song Notes, which instead of having beats on it, it's got the wonderful tabla playing of Manjeet Singh, and I'm singing on that one. So it wasn't only about Phil, but I just, having made such an impact with those records internationally, and then to be working with him again, at a later time and in both of our lives was something very special. He was a very, very special human being. Mm-hmm. And the relationship we had was incredibly special. And I look back with him with so much fondness about the times we had together and the music, and it's really amazing to see that so many DJs still play that music we made all this time later. We certainly didn't make music to be fashionable at the time. We made music that we wanted, that Phil and I felt was timeless. And many DJs have told me that, the records we made are timeless. And that's all you can hopefully try and do as an artist, is make something which is not set in a time. That track is probably the only one in the album where I deliberately produced it in a way that I wanted it to reflect that lovely period of Brazilian music from the 1970s. Yeah, I really just have a very, very deep love for Brazilian music. And the instrument that you mentioned is called a cuica. That's Cuica. It's actually a drum. There's a piece of string that you sort of pull between your fingers against the drum, and it's called the talking drum. It's used a lot in Brazilian music, and it's very central to Brazilian music. So it's not a sample, it's somebody actually playing it. And funnily enough, the guy playing it is from London. His name is Chris Frank, and he has a wonderful band called Delata that I used to play in back in the 2000s.
I was even thinking, actually, just even you being in London, like you haven't been there in so many years. It just must be quite crazy seeing everyone and catching up with people and seeing the same streets and,
Yeah. I've got all those singers from Squire for Hire and Sound Travels. Plus, I've got Arjuna from New Zealand and Ruby Cezanne. And amazingly enough, Charlotte, Tama Waipara is in town. So we're going to do Home, which is amazing. So we've got all these New Zealand guests as well.
That is so fantastic. Have you got a return ticket to New Zealand, or is London your home for the next wee while?
Oh, God, I wish. I've taken Zoot out of school. After this, we're going to Japan. I'm doing some promo there. And then we're back in New Zealand in September. And then I've got some dates in Australia. I'm going back up to China. The biggest thing for me is our Power Station show on November the 2nd. That's the album release show for Notes. So we're going to be doing a lot of tracks on the album. If I can get my voice together, I'll be doing the song that I'm singing on Notes. We'll be doing Ballodia. We'll have Rachel Clark in New Zealand. We'll have Lococo, my brother, all my New Zealand peeps.
Yes.
I'd love to bring Vanessa Freeman out for it, but I'm not sure that's quite possible. But yeah, I haven't done a big Auckland show, so I'm really looking forward to doing Power Station.
Nathan, before you mentioned your son Zoot, and I hear that you actually trusted Zoot to make some quite big calls on the album.
Yes.
Did he produce some of your sax playing?
He did. I think it was on Storm on that track. I think I was right near the end of the album, and after we sent the demos out to sort of 50 labels, and we didn't get any response back. It's certainly not been plain sailing. So I decided to go back into the studio, and instead of doing more dance tracks, I went, you know what? I need to do some more acoustic tracks, some sort of tracks that showcase the other side of what I could do. And I thought I wanted to do a cover. So then we did Storm. And I think Rachel Clark did an amazing job. So when I came to do the saxophone, I'd spent so long, 10 years trying to do stuff by myself in terms of my own playing. So I said to Zoot, right, you go in the producer chair, you press the button so I can hear what you're saying in the studio. I played and he went, no, Dad, that's good. Don't like that. Go up there. And it turned out amazing. Also, I must say, Jamie, my wife, she produced my vocals on Notes. Literally, Charlotte, I'd done literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of versions. I've got hundreds of sheets of paper of rewrites of the lyrics. It was the sort of song that I knew could be good, but I just couldn't get it right. And it was actually Mikey at Loop who said, Nathan, you have to finish it. And funnily enough, like even all my DJ friends, like Christopher Tubbs, who's a really good friend, he's like, my God, it's my favorite track. And Zaf at Love Vinyl here was very, very good friends with Phil Asher. He was like, mate, that song was so amazing. Like he just texted me this morning. He just got the vinyl this morning. And it's funny because that was one of the songs that almost didn't make it on the album. But I think it's because people can hear the immediacy and the emotion of what the song means to me. And it's about my life, but I didn't want it to be too cheesy and too literal. It was really hard to get right. It was great having her produce me because I was too close to it, and I just needed somebody else to go, that delivery is great. No, that's not right. So yeah, that song's very special to me, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback about it, which is very good.
You went through more than most, with your own health and with becoming a father.
Yeah.
And I think we had COVID, and, one of your best friends who you were working with passed away.
Yeah.
Do you think, how do you see the album? Is it a sort of, like a transformative album for you? You're out the other side, or how do you hear it?
I called it Notes because, it's notes on my life to this point. I've had a whole, as well as notes, music notes, but I'm bloody 52 now. It's like I've had a whole life and doing what I do. I mean, I left New Zealand in 1991, to go to New York. Then I came back and made Shift Left in 94, and then I moved to London in 95. And, I was a big part of the drum and bass scene. I mean, Randall just passed away on the weekend. And, Goldie on the phone really cut up. And it was actually Randall who played my original demos I made with A-sides at Cyclone. Charlotte, I mean, you speak to a lot of musicians. I've just had a life in music and it just keeps on going. And I'm just amazed I'm still here talking to you. And then I'm doing another record. And then I'm doing a sold out show at the Jazz Cafe on Wednesday. And then I'm still alive. And I'm playing and feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. Like, seriously, I'm so in touch with my creativity, and as a musician, there's no doubt in my mind, but it's not coming from a place of ego. It's just I'm just feeling so there and on. It's not about ego. It's not about Nathan Haines. It's just feeling my true self. It's totally different than what I was doing in my 20s and 30s. I'm a different person. It's just very true for me. There's no filter. It's like, and obviously playing saxophone is a lot easier than talking, as you can hear. I put the horn in my mouth and it just flows out. It's like I've just got like a fountain of music coming out of the end of my horn.
Yeah. And I think even with your saxophone, though, you're playing, it's not lyrics, but it's still got just as much impact. Yeah. You can hear emotion through your playing.
I hope so, Charlotte, because that's all that's all I'm trying to do is really relay that emotion. It's not about anything technical. Like all the production, of course, it's got to sound good. It's got to sound world class. It's got to do that. But for me, it's the emotion, it's really getting an emotion across, because that's what I want to do. That's all any musician wants to do.
Yeah.
I've had to follow in the footsteps of some incredible musicians. I'm a horn player, so John Coltrane's like my idol. I'm not John Coltrane, and I never will be. I can only be myself, and I can only play my life and my story. And that's what Notes is all about. It's my story, and the story of all my community, everybody involved. That's my family, my musical family, and my community.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic album. It's so uplifting. I'm so excited for it to be out, and I definitely will get it on vinyl. I feel like I want to let you go now, though, because you have to rest your voice, rest your body.
Charlotte, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate your continued support, and you do so much for the scene and for people like me. I really appreciate it.
I was speaking with Nathan Haines for the Music 101 interview podcast. We're live every Saturday afternoon on RNZ National, but of course you can hear all our interviews on rnz.co.nz and here on our Music 101 interview podcast. So, albums to go listen to, you must listen to Notes. I think it's such a brilliant album, and that last track on the album is the one that Nathan spoke about, that he sings, and it's just tear-jerking. Also, go and listen to Sound Travels. It's one of my favourite other Nathan Haines albums, and shares the same producer. If you know any Nathan Haines fans, make sure you forward this podcast onto them so they can listen. And while you're there, follow us so you can keep up to date with all the Music 101 interviews. Until next time, take care.